I install security cameras for a living. Most jobs are routine. Quiet offices, paranoid homeowners, the occasional convenience store. Easy work. But sometimes a request comes in that makes me hesitate. This was one of those. The call came late in the evening while I was finishing dinner. The number was local but unfamiliar. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something about the way it rang, long, insistent, made me pick up. Is this Lima Carter? The voice on the other end was smooth, almost too soft, like someone whispering just a little too close to the receiver. Yeah, who's asking? My name is Jordan Mayfair. I need a security system installed in my home. Cameras, motion sensors, the works. It's urgent. I leaned back in my chair, glancing at the clock. Nearly 9 p.m. Most people didn't call this late, unless it was an emergency. All right, I said, grabbing a pen. What kind of property are we talking about? There was a brief pause before he answered. A house. An older one. Needs full coverage. Every room, every hallway, and especially the crawl space. I stopped writing. Did you say the crawl space? Yes. Underneath the house. I frowned. People usually wanted cameras on their front door, backyard, maybe the garage. But the crawl space? That was new. Something wrong down there? I asked. Another pause. Then in that same unsettlingly calm tone, he said, I just need to know if anything moves. The line went silent. I waited for him to say more, but he didn't. I let out a slow breath, clicking my pen. All right, I can come by tomorrow. Morning work for you. Perfect. I'll text you the address. The call ended. A second later, my phone buzzed. The address popped up on my screen. I recognized the street. It was on the outskirts of town, near the old forest line. Houses out there were big, isolated, and more often than not abandoned. I exhaled, shaking off the uneasy feeling creeping on my spine. Probably just some rich guy with a rodent problem. Still, as I cleared the table and got ready for bed, I couldn't shake one thought. Why didn't he just call an exterminator? I pulled up to the house just as the last rays of sunlight dipped below the treetops. The Victorian mansion stood tall against the evening sky, its chipped paint and sagging shutters giving it a hollow, abandoned look. The front porch creaked, even though no one was standing on it, as if the house was sighing in its sleep. Something about the place felt wrong. I killed the engine and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. The job was simple: install the cameras, collect my payment, and leave. I had done this 100 times before, but as I stared at the house, a quiet unease settled in my stomach. It wasn't just the way it looked. It was the silence around it. No wind rustling the leaves. No distant sounds of passing cars. Just stillness. I exhaled sharply and grabbed my tool bag. Get in, get out. No reason to overthink it. As soon as I stepped out of the van, the front door opened. A man stood in the doorway, watching me. He was tall and thin, dressed in a black sweater and slacks. His hair was neatly combed, his face pale and smooth, almost too smooth. His lips barely moved when he spoke. You must be Lima, he said. His voice was quiet but clear, like someone speaking too close to your ear. Yeah, I said, adjusting the strap on my shoulder. You must be Jordan. He nodded once and gestured inside. Come in. I'll show you where the cameras need to go. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air felt heavier. The house smelled like old wood and something faintly metallic. The floorboards groaned under my boots, and the dim lighting cast long, creeping shadows along the walls. Do you live here alone? I asked, trying to make conversation. Yes, Jordan said. There was no hesitation in his voice, no extra detail. Just a simple, flat yes. I glanced around. The furniture looked expensive but untouched. There were no personal touches, no family photos, no books on the shelves, no dishes in the sink. Just a house filled with things, but no sign of a life being lived inside it. Jordan led me down a narrow hallway. The farther we walked, the more the unease crept in. The walls had faint scratches, like something had been dragged along them. The air smelled thicker here, damp and stale, like a basement that hadn't been opened in years. We stopped in front of a wooden door at the end of the hall. Jordan placed his hand on it, but didn't open it right away. He turned to me, his dark eyes unreadable. This is the crawl space, he said. I frowned. You want cameras in the crawl space? Yes. Why? He tilted his head slightly, as if confused by the question. Because something moves down there. A cold prickle ran down my spine. I studied his face, trying to figure out if he was messing with me, but his expression remained eerily calm. "Rats?" I asked. "No," he said. Then, after a pause, "Not rats." I waited for him to say more, to explain what exactly was moving down there. But he just turned the handle and pushed the door open. A wave of musty air spilled out, thick and sour. The opening yawned into blackness, the kind of dark that swallows everything. My flashlight barely cut through it, revealing wooden beams, old insulation, and dirt-covered flooring. The space stretched farther than I expected, disappearing into shadow. Jordan stepped aside, motioning for me to go in. My grip tightened on my tool bag. I didn't like this. Not one bit. But a job was a job. I took a breath and stepped inside. I followed Jordan down the narrow hallway, my tool bag clanking against my leg with every step. The air in the house was thick, stale, carrying the faint scent of damp wood and something metallic. The dim light from the overhead bulbs flickered slightly, making the shadows dance along the peeling wallpaper. Jordan walked ahead of me, his footsteps unnervingly soft. He didn't speak much, only offering a quiet, "This way," before leading me toward a heavy wooden door at the end of the hall. He pulled it open, revealing a dark passage leading downward. "The entrance to the crawl space is below," he said, gesturing for me to go first. I hesitated. Something about this job already felt off. Most people wanted cameras in their living rooms, hallways, maybe outside their front doors. Not underground. But I shook off the feeling and started down the creaking wooden steps, gripping the railing as the temperature seemed to drop. At the bottom, I flicked on my flashlight. The crawl space stretched wider than I expected. The ceiling was low, forcing me to crouch as I moved forward, my knees pressing into the cold, uneven dirt floor. The air smelled musty, thick with the scent of old wood and something else I couldn't quite place. I scanned the area with my light. Rusted chains dangled from the wooden beams above, swaying slightly as if disturbed by a breath of air I couldn't feel. Scratches lined the support beams, long, deep grooves, like something had been clawing at them over time. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to focus. Maybe rodents had gotten in. Maybe the chains were just leftovers from whatever renovations had been done before Jordan moved in. I pulled out the first camera, attaching it to a wooden post near the entrance. The red light blinked on. One down. As I moved deeper inside, I noticed something odd. A small device was already secured to one of the beams. I leaned in closer, brushing away a layer of dust. It wasn't a camera. It was a microphone. The realization made my skin crawl. Someone had been recording something down here. "Hey, Jordan," I called out, my voice tight. "You said you just moved in, right?" A pause. Then his voice drifted down from the top of the stairs. "That's right. Did you install a mic down here?" Another pause. Then, "No." I stared at the microphone, a cold sensation creeping up my spine. The device was old, covered in dust, but the small red light on its side was still blinking. It was on. Recording. Something shifted behind me. A faint scuffling sound like dirt shifting under weight. I whipped my flashlight around, the beams slicing through the darkness. Nothing. Just empty space, the crawl space stretching into the shadows. My breath felt heavy in my chest. I shook my head, trying to push away the unease. I wasn't about to let some weird, old microphone and a few creaks freak me out. I mounted the second camera near the center of the crawl space, adjusting the angle so it captured most of the area. As I turned to grab another from my bag, I heard it again. A whisper. It was so faint I almost convinced myself I imagined it. Almost. I swallowed hard and turned back to my work. The faster I finished, the faster I could get out of here. But as I reached for the last camera, my flashlight flickered. And in that brief moment of darkness, I swore I saw something move. I sat cross-legged on the dusty wooden floor, laptop balanced on my knees. The air in the house was thick and stale, carrying the scent of damp wood and something faintly metallic. I ignored it and focused on the screen. The security cameras I had installed flickered to life one by one, their feeds appearing in neat little boxes. The crawlspace camera was last to load. Jordan stood behind me, watching in complete silence. I had worked plenty of jobs where homeowners hovered over my shoulder, but there was something about the way he did it that put me on edge. No casual small talk, no impatient sighs, just silent, unmoving observation. I clear my throat. All right. Everything's up and running. Let's see what we got. I click through the feeds. The main hallway. The living room. The second floor. Nothing unusual. Then, I open the crawlspace feed. At first, it was just the same empty space I'd seen earlier. Wooden beams, concrete floor, the microphone I still hadn't figured out. The camera's infrared mode cast the scene in shades of gray, making the already eerie space look even more unnatural. I let the footage play for a minute. Nothing. Then the motion alert popped up. My stomach tightened. The red notification flashed in the corner of the screen, warning me that something had moved down there. I scrolled back a few seconds and hit replay. The screen showed the same crawl space, empty and still. Then suddenly movement. Something darted across the lower right-hand corner of the feed. It was fast, almost too fast to process, just a blurred shape vanishing behind one of the wooden beams. I rewound the clip, played it again. My fingers felt cold against the laptop's keyboard. There shouldn't be anything down there, I muttered, half to myself. I slowed the footage to a crawl. Frame by frame, I watched the shadowy figure move. Its limbs were long, too long, and the way it moved, low to the ground, almost like it was crawling, sent an unpleasant chill down my spine. But the worst part wasn't how it moved. The worst part was that, just before it disappeared behind the beam, it turned toward the camera. Not completely, just enough for me to see that it had a face. The details were blurry, but I could make out the vague shape of a head. A pale, misshapen head. It had no eyes. No features at all, except for what looked like a wide, open mouth. I snapped the laptop shut. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The room felt colder than before. I took a breath, forcing a laugh. Must be a glitch. Sometimes the infrared picks up weird shadows. Jordan didn't laugh. He stepped closer, his voice low. Now you see it too. I turned to look at him. His expression hadn't changed. His face was calm, unreadable. But his eyes, they weren't surprised. They weren't confused. They were expectant, like he had been waiting for me to notice. I was done. I just wanted to grab my things, collect my payment, and get the hell out of that house. Something about it felt wrong. More than just old wood creaking and pipes settling. It was the kind of wrong that settled deep in your gut, the kind that made your skin crawl without knowing why. I slung my tool bag over my shoulder and walked to the front door. My fingers wrapped around the handle, and I turned it. It didn't budge. Locked. I frowned. I could have sworn I hadn't locked it when I came in. I twisted the knob harder. Nothing. Jordan. I called over my shoulder. The door's stuck. No answer. I turned around. He was standing at the end of the hallway, just far enough that I could barely make out his expression in the dim light. His hands were in his pockets, shoulders relaxed, like this was completely normal. You have to finish the job, he said. My stomach tightened. Something in his tone, calm, patient, almost amused, made my pulse quicken. The job's done, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Cameras are installed. I just need to. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. A notification from the security system. Motion detected. I frowned. That was normal. Probably me moving just now. But then another notification popped up. Motion detected. Then another. And another. One after the other, rapid fire, from cameras all over the house. The hallway. The stairwell. The living room. The crawl space. A lump formed in my throat. My fingers trembled slightly as I tapped the screen and pulled up the live feed. The first camera showed the hallway behind me. Empty. The next one showed the stairwell. Also empty. Then I switched to the crawlspace camera. I nearly dropped my phone. Something moved. Not just a flicker, not just a shadow. A shape. A figure. It was crawling. No, slithering, through the dirt, just past the camera's view. I couldn't see it fully, only glimpses. Too many joints. Long, twisted limbs. A body that didn't move right, bending in places it shouldn't. A sharp breath escaped my lips. I looked up at Jordan. He was still watching me, his head tilted slightly, like he was waiting for me to understand something. You see it now, don't you? He said quietly. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. What the hell is in your crawl space? Jordan smiled. It knows you're here now. The house went dark. Not just dim, not just shadowy. It was as if someone had sucked every drop of light from the air. My laptop screen was the only thing glowing in the pitch-black room, its bluish light reflecting off my trembling hands. I heard a noise. A deep, slow creak, like wood bending under pressure. It came from beneath me, from the crawl space. I turned to Jordan. His face was barely visible in the faint glow of my screen. He wasn't scared. He wasn't confused. He was calm. "You see it now," he whispered. I swallowed hard. "See what?" Jordan didn't answer. Instead, he turned his gaze toward my laptop. I followed his eyes, and my stomach twisted into a knot. The camera feeds. Every single one of them had gone static, except for one. The feed from the crawl space. The grainy black and white image flickered, the night vision casting long shadows along the wooden beams. Then, something moved. At first, it was just a flicker, a blur in the corner of the screen. I leaned in, my breath shallow. The blur sharpened. A long, thin limb stretched across the dirt floor, too pale, too smooth, like something that had never seen daylight. Another limb followed. Then a head. My chest tightened. The shape crawled forward, slow and deliberate. It had no eyes, just a smooth, featureless face with a gaping mouth that stretched open like a wound. It was crawling toward the camera, toward me. I scrambled back from the laptop, knocking over my toolbox. "What the hell is that?" I gasped. Jordan whispered something under his breath. A prayer? A plea? Then he turned to me. "You can't let it leave." "What?" He didn't explain. He just ran, straight into the crawl space. I froze, my mind struggling to keep up with what I had just seen, what I was seeing now. The man had just run toward it, toward that thing. I heard him disappear into the dark. His footsteps faded beneath the floorboards. Then silence. The house was so quiet I could hear my own pulse hammering in my ears. I turned back to the laptop screen. Jordan was gone. The creature wasn't. It had stopped crawling. It was sitting now, hunched over in the middle of the crawl space, facing the camera. Then, in a single, unnatural motion, it tilted its head. I swear it was listening. My whole body screamed at me to run. But before I could even move, the thing on the screen twitched. The camera glitched for a second, then flickered back. And it was gone. Not in the frame anymore. Missing. The floor beneath me creaked. It wasn't in the crawl space anymore. It was in the house. I don't know when the air turned so cold. One moment, I was standing in the living room, my mind racing as I stared at the camera feed. The next, I was shivering like something had reached inside me and ripped the warmth out. The power flickered once, twice, and then nothing. The only light left was the dim glow of my laptop screen. I checked the feed again. There was moving, something crawling, its long limbs dragging across the floor like some grotesque marionette. At first, it was just a blur, too quick to follow, too quick to make sense of. Then it paused, just for a second, right in front of one of the cameras. My heart stopped. The thing was real. It wasn't a glitch. I could hear it now too, a deep, raspy breath, too heavy for a human, too deliberate for anything that should exist in this house. The crawl space. It was moving toward the entrance, toward the very spot I'd just been. My throat tightened. My fingers gripped the desk until my knuckles turned white. I glanced at the door. Locked. I glanced at the window. Locked. There was no way out, not through the usual exits. And then came the sound. A growl low, guttural, like something feral, deep in the earth. I turned, instinctively, toward the stairs leading down into the crawl space. But I didn't need to look. I could feel it now. It was right behind me. "Jordan," I called out, my voice shaky. "Jordan, this isn't funny anymore. Let me out." He didn't answer. I took a step toward the door, hoping the lock would miraculously give, but it didn't. The sound of something dragging itself closer to me made my chest constrict. It was close now, too close. I turned back to the crawl space, my heart pounding in my ears. What had he said? "You can't let it leave." Then the door slammed shut. I spun toward the sound, my pulse spiking. No, this was wrong. I had to get out. My breath came out in short, sharp bursts as I backed toward the stairs. I needed to find a way out. Fast. I tried to open the window, but it wouldn't budge. Panic started to set in. My hands were shaking, my mind was racing, and the air, it felt thick like I was breathing through water. The growling wasn't just from the crawl space anymore. It was all around me, a sound that vibrated through the walls, through the floorboards. And then I heard Jordan. Not from above. No, this came from behind me, right by the crawl space entrance. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "You're not supposed to leave." I turned, barely registering what I saw before I bolted. Jordan was standing there, a shadow in the dark, a figure so still it was like he wasn't even breathing. And in his eyes, there was something wrong. Something too vacant, too empty. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't even worried. "You have to finish it," he whispered, his voice barely a rasp. "It can't get out." I didn't stay to ask him what the hell that meant. I ran. I couldn't tell where I was going anymore. My legs were moving faster than my mind could keep up, but all I could hear were the sounds. The growling, the dragging, and the whispers. "It knows you're here now." I stumbled, my fingers fumbling against the doorknob hot and cold at the same time. I yanked at it. Locked again. The pressure in my chest made it hard to breathe. I glanced back, catching the faint outline of Jordan's figure, standing like he was waiting for something. Waiting for me to do what? I ran toward the window. The old glass rattled as I hammered my palm against it. It was too thick, too old. It wouldn't break. And then, just when I thought I might be trapped forever in this nightmare, I noticed the back door. It was slightly ajar. I didn't think. I just ran for it. The air was different outside. Cooler. Calmer. But there was no time to savor it. I slammed the door open with my shoulder and bolted down the steps. My legs burned, my heart pounded, but I couldn't stop. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. Behind me, I heard something else, a rustling. A scream, maybe, or a laugh. I didn't know anymore. But what I did know was that I couldn't stay. I couldn't go back. Not for anything. I stumbled down the driveway, my breath ragged. I glanced over my shoulder once, just once, and saw nothing but the empty house. The fog rolled in thick around it, swallowing it whole, as if it had never existed in the first place. It was over, or so I thought. But then my phone buzzed. My heart skipped a beat as I looked down. The screen lit up, a single notification blinking from the security feed. I opened it, my fingers trembling, and the last thing I saw was Jordan's face, staring into the camera, grinning, and in the background, just barely visible, something else. A shape, something tall, looming behind him. It was smiling too. I didn't sleep for days after I left that house. The images, the sounds, the feeling of something watching me from every shadow, those things haunted me. I didn't want to think about Jordan Mayfair, or that thing in the crawl space, or why he locked me in that house. But the more I tried to push it away, the more it came crashing back, like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I needed to know what happened. Needed to see the footage. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe it was just a trick of the light, a shadow in the camera's lens. Anything that would make sense of the nightmare. I spent the next couple of days trying to get back to normal. I told myself that it was just a weird job, that I could brush it off. But the thought of the camera feeds gnawed at me, eating away at my peace. I couldn't let it go. So, I sat down at my desk that night, my fingers trembling as I pulled up the files from the house. I knew, deep down, I was looking for something that would either save me from the truth or confirm my worst fears. I told myself that I didn't want to see what was in that crawl space. I told myself that, but I couldn't stop myself. I clicked on the first file. It was blank, just static, fuzzy noise like an old TV trying to tune into a channel that didn't exist. My stomach churned. No surprise there. The other files weren't much different. Distorted images, glitchy footage, frames that looked like they were fighting to hold on to some kind of secret. But then I came across one last file. The timestamp was the last one I'd recorded before leaving the house. I hesitated. I knew I should close the program, walk away, pretend I didn't care. But I couldn't. I clicked it. At first, I didn't see anything. Just blackness. Then, the noise started, faint, like something was breathing on the other side of the screen. It wasn't just static. There was something more, something beneath the surface. A low hum, like a growl. And then, a voice. It was so quiet first I almost missed it. It wasn't human. Not really. It was warped, distorted, like something trying to speak through a broken radio. "You brought me more eyes." I froze. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. My heart pounded in my ears. And for a moment, I couldn't breathe. The voice wasn't Jordan's. It wasn't the voice of anything human. And then, the camera feed shifted. The blurry image flickered for a second, like a glitch in the Matrix. But this time, it wasn't static. It was a shape, a figure, moving slowly, just at the edge of the crawl space. It was tall. Too tall. The figure didn't look like anything I'd seen before. Its limbs were too long, too thin, like someone had twisted them beyond what was natural. Its head, if you could even call it a head, was just a massive shadow, like it wasn't quite solid. The darkness seemed to swirl around it, as if it was part of the house itself. I leaned forward in my chair, staring, heart racing. The figure was moving toward the camera now, slowly, deliberately, its head tilting as if it were studying the lens. And then, the feed cut off. Everything went black. I stared at the screen, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold the mouse. It wasn't just the footage. It was the voice. The words. You brought me more eyes. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what I had seen. But one thing was clear. Whatever was in that crawl space, it wasn't just trapped there. It was waiting. Waiting for someone to see it, to acknowledge it. And now that I had, it was... No, I couldn't think that way. It was just a job. A bad job. But the words kept echoing in my head. The figure in the crawl space. Jordan's smile as he locked me in. The feeling of something watching me, following me. Even now. I shut the computer down. But the weight in my chest didn't lift. The silence in the room felt heavier than it ever had before. I couldn't escape it. I couldn't forget it. The last thing I did before I went to bed was lock the doors. Not that it would matter. Not anymore. And somewhere in the dark, behind my locked door, I swear I heard it again. That same low growl, like it was waiting, just beyond the walls. And the words, still lingering in my mind. You brought me more eyes. I couldn't shake the feeling that the thing in the crawl space was still watching me.